There is one experience that nearly everyone fears, yet almost everyone misunderstands: rejection. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid it. They avoid difficult conversations, delay pursuing their dreams, stay in unhealthy relationships, or silence their own ideas, not because they lack ability, but because they fear hearing one simple word: no. But what if rejection isn't your enemy? What if it's one of life's greatest teachers? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, believed that our greatest suffering doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how we judge what happens. A rejection letter, a breakup, a missed opportunity. These events have no meaning on their own. It is our interpretation that turns them into defeat or into growth. That is why today's journey is not about avoiding rejection. It is about learning to use it. Because every rejection carries a hidden lesson. Every setback reveals something about your character. Every closed door asks a simple question: will this stop you or will it shape you? The Stoics never promised an easy life. They promised something far more valuable: a mind that remains steady regardless of circumstances. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." History continually proves him right. Abraham Lincoln lost multiple elections before leading a divided nation. Viktor Frankl transformed unimaginable suffering into timeless wisdom about meaning. Admiral James Stockdale survived years as a prisoner of war by practicing Stoic principles that no prison could take away. None of these people became extraordinary because life spared them rejection. They became extraordinary because they refused to let rejection define them. The same choice exists for every one of us. So instead of asking, "How can I avoid rejection?" ask a better question: what is rejection trying to teach me? That question begins the first lesson. Lesson 1: rejection reveals what you can control. Imagine two people applying for the same position. Both prepare carefully. Both work hard. Only one is hired. The difference between their futures is rarely determined by the rejection itself. It is determined by what they do next. One person says, "I'm not good enough." The other asks, "What can I improve?" That single shift changes everything. This is the foundation of Stoicism. The dichotomy of control. Some things belong to us: our effort, our discipline, our integrity, our response. Other things never truly do. Other people's opinions, economic conditions, timing, luck, the decisions of strangers. Most anxiety comes from confusing these two categories. We exhaust ourselves trying to control what has never been ours to control. Marcus Aurelius understood this despite ruling an empire. Even an emperor couldn't control every outcome. He could only control the quality of his own actions. Modern psychology reaches a similar conclusion. People who focus on their actions rather than external results recover more quickly from setbacks, because they always have somewhere productive to direct their energy. So the next time you're rejected, don't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Ask, "What remains within my control?" Can you learn? Can you improve? Can you try again? The rejection may stay the same, but your relationship with it changes completely. That is the beginning of real freedom. Lesson 2: rejection tests your identity, not your worth. One rejection has an incredible ability to rewrite the story we tell ourselves. A failed interview becomes, "I'm not talented." A breakup becomes, "I'm unlovable." A failed business becomes, "I'm a failure." But notice something. The event happened only once. The identity was created afterward. Epictetus taught that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they make about them. This idea is as true today as it was 2,000 years ago. Our brains naturally search for patterns. It helped our ancestors survive danger. But in modern life, it often causes us to mistake temporary setbacks for permanent truths. Marcus Aurelius refused to measure himself by praise or criticism because both depended on changing opinions. Instead, he measured himself by character. Was he acting wisely? Was he being just? Was he showing courage? These questions mattered far more than public approval. Think about your own life. Who are you when no one is applauding? Who are you when your efforts go unnoticed? Who are you after hearing no? Those moments reveal the foundation of your identity. If your confidence depends on external validation, rejection will always feel devastating. But if your identity is rooted in your values, rejection becomes feedback, not a verdict. Real confidence is not believing you'll always succeed. It is knowing that failure cannot take away your character. Lesson 3. Rejection separates desire from desperation. There is a profound difference between wanting something and believing you cannot be happy without it. Most people don't notice when desire quietly becomes attachment. They convince themselves that one promotion, one relationship, or one opportunity will finally make them complete. That belief creates desperation, and desperation changes the way we behave. People sense it. In relationships, it pushes others away. In negotiations, it weakens your position. In leadership, it clouds judgment. Ironically, the tighter we cling to a particular outcome, the more anxious we become. The Stoics offered a different approach. Pursue excellence with everything you have, but release your attachment to the outcome. This is closely connected to amor fati, loving your fate. It doesn't mean enjoying rejection. It means refusing to waste it. Imagine an archer. They practice tirelessly, aim carefully, and release the arrow with complete focus. Once it leaves the bow, the wind decides the rest. The Stoics believed our responsibility ends with the quality of our effort. Life works the same way. Prepare well, act courageously, then let go. This mindset isn't passive, it is liberating. Because the person who is no longer desperate thinks more clearly, acts more confidently, and recovers more quickly when life doesn't go according to plan. Sometimes rejection isn't taking something away. Sometimes it's revealing that your peace depended too much on a single outcome. Marcus Aurelius understood that true freedom begins when your inner peace no longer depends on someone else's approval, and that realization prepares us for the next lesson. Because sometimes the opportunities we lose are not punishments at all. Sometimes they are protection. The rejection that hurts today may be quietly leading you toward a future you cannot yet see. Sometimes the greatest opportunities in life first appear as disappointments. When we're rejected, all we can see is the door that closed. We rarely notice the path that has quietly opened beside it. Only with time do many people realize that the job they didn't get led them to better work. The relationship that ended prepared them for a healthier one. The failure they resented became the experience that made later success possible. The Stoics understood that our perspective is always limited. We judge events in the present without knowing where they might eventually lead. That is why Marcus Aurelius encouraged himself to accept reality without surrendering to it. Acceptance was never about passivity. It was about responding wisely instead of resisting what could no longer be changed. This leads us to the fourth lesson. Lesson 4. Rejection can redirect you toward a better path. Human beings naturally assume they know what success should look like. We create a plan. We picture a specific outcome. Then life unfolds differently. Our first instinct is to believe something has gone wrong. But what if rejection is not a detour? What if it is the road itself? Modern psychology calls this cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt when circumstances change instead of clinging to expectations. People who develop this ability are generally more resilient because they stop asking, "Why did this happen?" and begin asking, "What can I do now?" That simple question changes everything. History offers countless examples. Winston Churchill spent years dismissed by political rivals before becoming the leader Britain needed during World War II. Those years of rejection became years of preparation. Without them, he may never have developed the judgment and resilience history remembers. The Stoics would remind us that we cannot always choose what happens, but we can always choose what happens next. Perhaps the opportunity you lost wasn't the one meant to shape your future. Perhaps it simply prepared you for the one that will. Lesson 5. Rejection builds emotional strength. Imagine someone who has never faced disappointment. At first, that sounds like a fortunate life. In reality, it can become a fragile one. Without adversity, emotional resilience never develops. Just as muscles grow by resisting weight, character grows by resisting hardship. The Stoics understood this deeply. One of their most practical exercises was premeditatio malorum, imagining potential setbacks before they happened. They weren't expecting life to be miserable. They were training themselves not to be surprised when difficulties arrived. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every day would include difficult people, delays, misunderstandings, and unexpected obstacles. By expecting challenges, he was less likely to be controlled by them. Modern psychology reaches a similar conclusion through what researchers call stress inoculation. Small, manageable challenges prepare us to handle greater ones with more confidence. Think about elite athletes. Championships are not won because pressure disappears. They are won because years of pressure teach athletes how to remain calm when everything is on the line. Life is no different. Every rejection becomes another opportunity to strengthen emotional endurance. Viktor Frankl discovered this under the harshest imaginable conditions. While imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, he observed that although everything else could be taken away, one freedom always remained: the freedom to choose one's attitude. That insight echoes the Stoics across nearly 2,000 years. Pain is often unavoidable, but the meaning we assign to that pain remains our choice. Every rejection asks the same question: will this experience harden your heart or strengthen your character? Lesson 6: Stop needing everyone's approval. There is an invisible prison that traps millions of people. Its walls are built from one question: what will other people think? This fear quietly shapes countless decisions. People stay silent when they should speak. Remain in unhealthy situations because leaving might invite criticism. Avoid chasing meaningful goals because failure could be embarrassing. Little by little, they stop living for their own values and begin living for someone else's approval. The Stoics considered this one of the greatest forms of slavery. Epictetus offered a powerful reminder: if you truly wish to improve, you must be willing to be misunderstood. Every person who has ever created something meaningful has faced criticism. Every leader has been questioned. Every innovator has been doubted. If your peace depends on universal approval, you will spend your life chasing something impossible. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire where every decision pleased some people and angered others. He learned that leadership could never be measured by popularity. Instead, he asked himself different questions. Was the decision wise? Did it reflect courage and self-control? Those standards remain timeless. Modern psychology consistently finds that people who build their self-worth on internal values rather than external validation experience greater confidence and emotional well-being. Why? Because approval is unpredictable. Character is not. Imagine two employees. One works only to receive praise. The other works because excellence reflects who they are. When criticism comes, and eventually it always does, the first person loses motivation. The second listens, learns, improves if necessary, and continues. Their confidence comes from within. That is real freedom. Rejection has a remarkable way of exposing whether we seek success or simply acceptance. And once you stop needing everyone's approval, something unexpected happens. You become calmer, more authentic, more courageous, because your decisions are no longer controlled by fear. They are guided by principle. That is where Stoicism leads. Not toward a life without rejection, but toward a life where rejection no longer has the power to decide your worth. And once you reach that point, another transformation begins. Because rejection does something comfort almost never can. It reveals the lessons you were unable to see while everything was going well. Comfort has a way of hiding our weaknesses. When everything is going well, we rarely question our habits, our decisions, or our perspective. Success can be encouraging, but it often teaches very little. Rejection is different. It forces us to stop, to reflect, to ask questions we might otherwise avoid. That is why some of life's greatest breakthroughs begin with disappointment. Lesson 7. Rejection reveals your blind spots. Every rejection contains information. Not every rejection means you were wrong. Sometimes circumstances, timing, or factors beyond your control determine the outcome. But even then, there is usually something to learn. Marcus Aurelius practiced constant self-examination. Rather than blaming others first, he asked what he could improve within himself. Not because he assumed he was always at fault, but because his own character was the only thing he could truly shape. This is the difference between pride and wisdom. Pride asks, whose fault is this? Wisdom asks, what is this trying to teach me? Modern psychology calls this a growth mindset, the belief that abilities are developed through learning and effort rather than fixed forever. People with this mindset don't see rejection as proof they lack potential. They see it as feedback. Think of an elite athlete reviewing a lost game. They don't only celebrate what went well, they study mistakes. They identify weaknesses. They adjust their training. Without honest feedback, improvement slows. Life works the same way. Perhaps your communication could improve. Perhaps your preparation wasn't complete. Perhaps your expectations were unrealistic. Or perhaps you simply encountered circumstances beyond your influence. The challenge is learning to separate what belongs to fate from what belongs to you. The Stoics never encouraged harsh self-criticism. Instead, they encouraged honest self-reflection. Not, why am I not enough? But, how can I become better? That single question transforms rejection from an enemy into a teacher. Lesson 8. Courage grows every time you risk rejection. Most people think courage means feeling fearless. The Stoics knew better. Courage is acting despite fear. Fear itself is natural. Your brain is designed to protect you from danger, and surprisingly, it often reacts to social rejection much like physical pain, a difficult conversation, a public failure. Being criticized, being ignored, your heart races. Your thoughts become uncertain. Your instinct tells you to retreat. But between that instinct and your response lies a choice. Epictetus taught that while our first emotional reaction may be automatic, we are not required to obey it. That small space between emotion and action is where freedom begins. Every time you speak honestly despite the fear of criticism, apply for the opportunity despite the possibility of failure, or try again after hearing no, you strengthen something far more valuable than confidence. You strengthen courage. Theodore Roosevelt celebrated this idea in his famous description of the man in the arena. Not the spectator who criticizes from safety, but the one willing to risk failure in pursuit of something meaningful. Stoicism asks the same of us. Not perfection, participation. Because every rejection survived teaches you an unforgettable lesson. I can handle more than I thought. Once you realize rejection cannot destroy you, fear begins losing its authority over your decisions. And that is where real confidence is born. Lesson 9. Authenticity is more valuable than approval. One painful rejection often tempts people to change who they are. They hide their opinions, suppress their personality, pretend to enjoy things they don't. They become whoever they think others will accept. At first, this seems like protection, but eventually it creates a different kind of suffering. You begin wondering whether people appreciate the real you, or only the version you've created to avoid rejection. Marcus Aurelius believed we should live according to nature. For human beings, that means living according to reason, virtue, and honesty. It does not mean refusing to grow. It means refusing to abandon your principles simply to gain acceptance. Healthy relationships, meaningful friendships, and trustworthy leaders all share one quality: authenticity, not perfection. People may disagree with you. They may reject your ideas, but the right people will respect someone who lives with integrity. Modern psychology supports this as well. Research consistently links authenticity with greater emotional well-being, stronger relationships, and lower levels of anxiety. Pretending to be someone else is exhausting. Truth is surprisingly freeing. Of course, authenticity is not an excuse for stubbornness. We should continue improving our skills, communication, and character. But there is a profound difference between refining yourself and replacing yourself. One is growth. The other is fear. The Stoics believed that virtue is worth protecting even when it costs popularity, because popularity changes. Character endures. Lesson 10. Rejection is preparing you for greater responsibility. At first, rejection feels like something is being taken away, but often something is being built instead. Character, patience, humility, perspective. History rarely remembers people whose lives unfolded exactly as planned. It remembers those who continued despite disappointment. Abraham Lincoln lost multiple elections before becoming one of America's greatest presidents. Those defeats taught resilience, empathy, and perseverance, qualities his future leadership demanded. Marcus Aurelius spent years studying philosophy before ruling Rome. His greatest preparation was not political. It was personal. He learned to govern himself before governing an empire. That is one of Stoicism's deepest lessons. External success without inner discipline is fragile. Responsibility grows safely only when character grows first. Imagine iron entering a forge. The fire alone does not strengthen it. The repeated shaping does. Rejection is often that fire. Reflection is the shaping. Action is the transformation. Perhaps the opportunity you desire requires a wiser version of yourself than the one who first pursued it. Not a different person, a calmer one, a more disciplined one, a more patient one. Seen this way, rejection is no longer merely a setback. It becomes preparation. Preparation for opportunities you cannot yet see. Preparation for responsibilities you are still growing into. And perhaps most importantly, preparation for becoming someone whose peace is no longer controlled by circumstances. That brings us to the final lessons. Because after rejection has strengthened your character, revealed your blind spots, and taught you courage, one question remains. What will you do next? There is always a moment after rejection when nothing seems to happen. The conversation is over. The opportunity is gone. The answer has been given. But beneath the silence, something far more important is taking place. Your character is making a decision. Will this be the chapter where you give up, or the chapter where you begin again? Marcus Aurelius believed that our lives are shaped less by what happens to us than by how we choose to respond. Every setback presents a choice, and that choice quietly determines the direction of our future. That brings us to the 11th lesson. Lesson 11, the power of beginning again. One of the greatest strengths a person can develop is the willingness to start over. Not because failure is enjoyable, not because rejection stops hurting, but because they understand that progress belongs to those who refuse to let one setback become the end of the story. Think about a child learning to walk. No one expects perfection. Falling is part of learning. Yet as adults, we often treat a single failure as proof that we should stop trying. One rejected application becomes, maybe I'm not capable. One failed relationship becomes, maybe love isn't meant for me. One business setback becomes, I guess I wasn't cut out for this. The event lasts a moment. The story we build around it can last for years. The Stoics challenged those stories. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the past could not be changed and the future could not be guaranteed. Only the present moment belonged to him. That perspective is deeply practical. Instead of asking, what if I fail again? Ask, what can I do today? Send the next application. Practice the skill. Have the difficult conversation. Take one more step. Modern psychology supports this principle. Action often comes before motivation. Waiting to feel confident usually keeps us standing still. But taking meaningful action, even small action, creates momentum, and momentum rebuilds confidence. Every time you begin again, you prove something important to yourself. I am stronger than this setback. That belief is earned through action, not wishful thinking. The person who keeps beginning again becomes incredibly difficult to defeat. Lesson 12. Let go of perfection. Many people aren't afraid of failure. They're afraid of looking imperfect. They believe they must always appear confident, successful, and in control. But perfection is an impossible standard. The more we chase it, the more anxious we become. Marcus Aurelius never pretended to be flawless. In his private reflections, he constantly reminded himself to be more patient, more disciplined, and more just. Despite ruling an empire, he saw himself as a lifelong student. That humility is one of Stoicism's greatest strengths. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. Modern psychology reaches a similar conclusion through self-compassion. People who acknowledge mistakes without attacking their own worth are more likely to learn, adapt, and persevere. There is an important difference between responsibility and shame. Responsibility says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am the mistake. One leads to growth. The other leads to paralysis. Rejection reminds us that no meaningful life is free from disappointment. Every athlete loses. Every entrepreneur hears no. Every leader makes mistakes. Every philosopher continues learning. What matters is not maintaining a flawless image. What matters is becoming a wiser person than you were yesterday. Patience instead of impatience. Courage instead of avoidance. Wisdom instead of impulse. Character is built one decision at a time. And once you stop trying to be perfect, you finally become free to grow. Lesson 13. Time is too precious to live in fear. The Stoics practiced a simple but profound reflection. Memento mori. Remember that you will die. To many people, this sounds depressing. To the Stoics, it was liberating. Because when you remember that life is limited, many fears suddenly lose their power. The fear of embarrassment. The fear of criticism. The fear of hearing no. Ask yourself a difficult question. Years from now, what will you regret more? The opportunities that rejected you? Or the opportunities you never pursued because you feared rejection? For most people, the answer is clear. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't encouraging fear. He was encouraging urgency. Life is too short to postpone becoming the person you want to be. Too short to let someone else's opinion determine your future. Too short to allow one rejection to silence your purpose. Confidence does not appear before action. It grows because of action. Every rejection survived becomes evidence that you are more resilient than you once believed. Eventually, your definition of success begins to change. Success is no longer measured only by promotions, money, or recognition. It is measured by whether you remained faithful to your values, whether you acted with wisdom, whether you chose courage over comfort, whether you maintained integrity when compromise would have been easier. That is the victory Stoicism offers, a victory that no rejection can take away. So the next time life tells you no, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask instead, "What is this trying to teach me?" Maybe it is teaching patience, maybe discipline, maybe humility, maybe courage, or maybe it is teaching the most important lesson of all, that your worth has never depended on another person's approval. It has always depended on your response. Rejection does not define your future. Your character does. The obstacle you face today may become the very reason you grow tomorrow. The pain you experience now may become the wisdom you one day share with someone else. The door that closes may guide you toward one that was always meant for you. That is the quiet power of Stoicism. It doesn't promise a life without rejection. It teaches you how to become someone rejection cannot break. Someone who meets adversity with calm instead of panic, with reason instead of impulse, with courage instead of fear. And perhaps that is the greatest form of reverse psychology. The rejection you spent years trying to avoid may become the experience that shapes the strongest version of yourself. If this message challenged the way you think about rejection, don't let it end here. Take one setback from your own life and ask yourself what it taught you. You may discover that what once felt like your greatest disappointment was actually the beginning of your greatest transformation. And if you're ready to continue exploring timeless Stoic wisdom, practical psychology, and the habits that build unshakable resilience, be sure to subscribe, because in our next journey, we'll uncover another powerful lesson from Marcus Aurelius, one that reveals why mastering yourself is the highest form of power, and why no one can truly control their life until they first learn to control their own mind. Until then, remember this: the world may reject your plans. It cannot reject your character. Protect that above everything else. Because as Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the obstacle is never merely in the way. With wisdom, courage, and virtue, the obstacle becomes the way.